a little bit more context around who we are and why we are here. So we are Consider Capital, and one of the things that we do is we run our alternative funding school, and that's what we are doing right now behind the scenes, working really hard to launch what will be our 6th cohort. Some of you will have already participated, some of you are joining in the summer, but if you've no idea what this is or what we do, it is a 6-week cohort-based course for founders based anywhere in the world, working in any sector, looking at any kind of funding options to help you figure out what funding fit is right for you. And that is one way that we support you. If you have any questions about our funding school, wonderful Jordan, as I said, one of our precious graduates, is going to stay for an extra half an hour at the end of this session for any questions that you have about the school. That's why we're here. But to get back to the topic at hand, we're talking about fundraising and confidence. And I want to ask you a question. I want you to imagine. What do you think of? What do you imagine when I say the words funding, startup fundraising rounds? What do you think of? And more importantly, how does it make you feel, those words? It can be very different for lots of people, depending on where you are based, your context, your type of business. But for lots of us, it brings fear to us. It makes us think of these terrifying headlines in TechCrunch and other sort of media outlets that seem to dominate these spaces, raising the biggest funding rounds from the best of the best. $25 million in VC funding, $43 million in VC funding, these huge headlines, and lots of us can feel demoralized and confused because that's not us. But really, by seeing only these headlines, we're seeing a very narrow view of the funding landscape, and really an incorrect one. There is a much bigger funding landscape out there to be able to access, and that's what we are really here to show you, is the possibilities that exist outside what you really see. Because the true reality, although these headlines dominate everything in the startup world, actually only 0.05% of startups raise venture capital. Venture capital is a type of funding that is for the likes of Airbnb, Uber, Facebook, those types of businesses that benefit from huge amounts of money, are trying to be unicorns, billion-dollar valuations, that situation. But actually, hardly any of us raise that funding, and there's lots of different reasons for that. One of them is because a lot of us are wasting our time, our energy, our resources, and our confidence chasing money that's not right for us. I've seen it time and time again. People have spent 6 months, 9 months, a year searching for a type of funding that they'll never access. They lose confidence, they lose money, they lose runway, and lots of the time they're forced to shut down their businesses. Whereas we are trying to challenge that and say that actually taking the time to really think about your own funding journey, equipping yourself with information, knowledge, and the stories that you'll hear today help to show you that there is another way to do this, and you don't need to go down this demoralizing path if your business doesn't fit this route. And so what we like to say is that it's not business models that need to change, it is education around alternative funding options. I see it again and again. People try and squeeze themselves into the wrong business model to fit VC funding. They try and alter who they are, their values, and they think that they will be the exception, and that VC will be right for them regardless of their other aspirations. But it's not true. That's not right. You're not going to be the exception, but you don't need to change your business model. You just need to understand and see that there is another path. And that is what we are trying to do. We are trying to help founders find the right path amongst all of this VC noise, all of this information that's largely incorrect and not helpful for us. We do this through our school, but we also do this through our events that we run. We share a lot of information. We have our newsletter, all around trying to help you all find your path. We work with lots of different funding providers, investors, different bodies who are interested in supporting businesses that are doing things differently, who might sit between, you know, philanthropic, charity and VC money, all of these social impact businesses. But it's hard to imagine how you might get funding. These types of people are here to try and help you. We've had about 150 people come through our program so far. Lots of you are here today. You're based in about 19 different countries, and we are so thrilled that some of you are here today to share your stories as well on your own funding journeys. So that's a little bit about us, why we're here and what we do. I want to get into the good stuff now, the main event here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass the mic over to our wonderful speakers today. I'm going to start with Hermione and then go to Kate and then go to Simon. These three founders are brilliant examples of what is possible when you choose to go down a different route. They all have their own unique stories, their unique missions, why they've done what they've done. And I'm really excited to be able to hear them myself and to share them all with you. We've specifically chosen people that are currently fundraising because they are in the same position as you. They are figuring this out. So it's very raw and real for you rather than somebody that fundraised 10 years ago and has largely forgotten how they did it or how it made them feel. So that is what we're doing today. I'm going to start off with Hermione, who is one of our funding school graduates from our last cohort. She joined our cohort with a business called Donation. She has run this business for a very long time. She's largely bootstrapped it. She raised a small amount of equity funding, but largely bootstrapped it. And she joined us with a lot of fundraising knowledge already, specifically asking, is it possible to raise funding, keep my integrity, keep this business, safeguard my mission? What are the options? And this is the sort of where she is right now. I'm not going to say conclusion because people are always changing and shifting, but this is where she is right now. I'm going to hand it over to Hermione.
Thanks, Esme. Great introduction. And yeah, it feels strange to be presenting to so many people about our fundraising when we're still very much in the thick of it, but also quite exciting and hopefully helpful for you all. Just a bit of an intro in terms of what we do at Donation. We exist because ultimately we believe that motivated and informed people are the key to unblocking progress on sustainability and net zero. Our mission is to bring communities together to really mobilize people, mostly workplace communities, I should say, to mobilize millions of people to take really meaningful action on climate change. We do that using an online platform, which is kind of built on behavioral science and game design to really motivate individuals to make pledges as part of teams, and pledges to take individual actions that can kind of lead on to upskilling them to work in a greener economy. And that's what we're really aiming to do, to help upskill the workforce so that the people don't become a blocker to progress. I like to say that we take people from climate anxiety to climate action, and then on from climate action to innovation and leadership. But it's that first bit that we've really focused on up until now, and we're now, given where we are as a world and also where businesses are in delivering on their sustainability plans, we really need to focus on that second part, taking them on to innovation and leadership much more, which is why we're fundraising. And that's exactly what, like, the goal of our fundraise is to focus on that, which will help to make sure we're driving impact that is worthwhile for where we're at, but also will help to make our business model much more solid by increasing customer retention, which is a key challenge we face. We're raising 600,000. That's our target. We've got a stretch target of 1 million that would allow us to do a bunch of extra very exciting stuff if we succeed with that. We've already got 440,000 committed, so we're a good way along the journey there. When talking to investors, the narrative is that donation really started 4 years ago because that's when the market for climate action and the world really woke up and business got real. But in reality, as Esme pointed to, I've been doing this for a lot longer, over a decade. Over that time, we started off with grant funding, and then went on to an accelerator program, did some equity crowdfunding, and then followed by some extreme bootstrapping for a few years, until actually in 2018 we resolved to close the business because it had just got too tough and there wasn't quite demand to make it viable and worth the effort. But then that was exactly when Greta hit the streets and Extinction Rebellion came out and the world woke up. And the very week that I was about to send an email out to all of our investors to say, sorry, we're closing, Network Rail and Pret a Manger signed up through the site with almost no outreach or effort from me. And I went, maybe I shouldn't send that email. Needless to say, we didn't close down because we're still here. 4 years on, and since then we've been kind of revenue funded, grew from 1.5 people at that point through to 19 at our peak at the end of 2021, all thanks to kind of growing customer demand and a big partnership with the EU. The EU partnership came to an end. We're now back down to a team of 8 or so, but still so much bigger than we were before. That organic growth is something that I'd really aspired to and I was super proud of, but I've definitely got some scars from it as well. I mean, going from 19 people to 8, I could tell you, I could talk for hours about that, but I won't. Ultimately, though, climate change isn't waiting for organic growth, and we needed to accelerate what we're doing a lot faster. So that is why we're now fundraising. As a tech business, the typical route would be to go down the VC model, but I'd always felt quite uncomfortable with that, which is probably why I pushed on the stubbornly kind of stayed on the organic growth side. And I think the reason for my discomfort, which I imagine many of you might share, but it was really clarified to me when I was on a fundraising readiness course that was very much targeted for people going down that route, when I kind of heard them talk about failure in terms of a VC's from a VC's perspective, and how any business that didn't return 10 times profit within 5 years through an exit or an IPO would be deemed as a failure. I questioned that. I was like, okay, so if I were to grow donation, and I mean, no, so to start with, I'd say I would love to grow donation to a valuation of 10 times. And you know what? An exit isn't out of the question. I think if there was a really aligned route to be acquired by someone that could help to scale our impact, that would make great sense. And yay, there's potential for that as well. But equally, if in 5 or 10 years' time, we were still going independently, making a healthy profit, growing year on year, had happy customers who were creating a great impact for the world, maybe even paying our investors a small dividend each year, like that would be successful. I would be incredibly proud of that. In no way would that be a failure in my eyes, but our investors would see that as a failure. And that misalignment just really stuck with me, and I felt very uncomfortable about it. Because ultimately I'd rather shoot for a 50% or a 60-70% chance of making of that outcome than a 10% chance of making a quick 10 times return. So the patient capital risk appetite was slightly misaligned there. That's why I came on the alternative funding school, which taught me a lot and was a wonderful experience. If any of you haven't done it, I would recommend looking into it. Ultimately, it reaffirmed a lot of what I already knew, gave me some much needed confidence to go out there and have these conversations with investors. There were a lot of tools and different funding models in there that I was really fascinated about, especially the steward ownership model. I think if I were to run another business, I might go down that route. For various reasons right now, it didn't feel quite right for us. But towards the end, I learned about a model called, well, I should say the thing that I really took out of it was, you know what, this funding path for us about going, about equity funding was what we need right now, was most suitable for us, that we're really targeting impact aligned, values aligned angels, family officers, some impact funds as well would be ideal. And that's great. But later on in the journey, in the course, I learned about this model called Equity for Good, which is a really simple tool that just resonated so well with us. It was coined by the team at Toast Ale, who are a lovely beer company, if any of you don't know them. And they were designed for impact from its very core. They make beer using waste bread. They donate 50% of their profits to food waste charities. They're a B Corp. So right from their supply chain to their profit distribution to the way they work with their people, they think about the impact and using business as a force for good in their DNA. But then they realized as they were fundraising, like if they're really successful with their business and they help their investors to make a 10 times return, and those investors, if they then go and invest that way bigger wad of cash they've got into Shell or Monsanto, then actually the net impact of Toast Ale on the world has been a negative one, and they would have no control over that. And that didn't sit well with them, because they're like, we literally do everything that is designed to have positive impact. So and where our money goes is probably the place where we have the biggest impact possible. So they asked their investors to sign a really simple but legally binding pledge, committing them to reinvest any of their capital gains from their investment into impact-driven businesses, or donating it to charity if they wanted to do that. While it's legally binding, it's not actually legally enforceable, because realistically they can't track what their investors do with their money after the event, and they're also not going to be able to take them to court if they think they've broken the pledge. But when I heard about this, it really resonated. I mean, donation itself is built upon a concept of pledging. That is our very model. We encourage people to make pledges to change their behaviors, to do good things. We know the power of a pledge. I even wrote a whole master's thesis on the power of pledging. So we believe in it. It gets people to talk and to think about the impact of their actions, and just making that public commitment makes them, think about areas they might have an impact they might not have thought of before. So we have decided to incorporate this model into our fundraise, asking all of our investors to sign the pledge. We've amended the wording slightly. It's a two-page document that once they've made a commitment, we say, and here's the Equity for Good pledge we'd love you to sign. We've amended the wording just to add in that they can invest the capital gains into socially impactful projects as well as businesses, because actually it may be that if they've invested a few £1,000s, they would rather spend that or some of it on eco home retrofit, or doing a sustainable MBA, sustainable business course, or buying an electric vehicle, or something that's so aligned to our mission and what we do as a business. And to me, that would be a really great use of the funds. Very aligned. So that's what we're doing. So far, as I say, we've got 440k committed. Those people have agreed to sign the pledge. We haven't closed the funding round yet, so they're not all signed. It's been a really interesting conversation to have with investors, and I'll be honest, I always feel pretty uncomfortable about it, because a lot of them react saying, oh, it feels a little bit patronizing, Hermione. It's kind of our money to do what we like with. I don't really see why you have a say in that. I'm like, well, we're going to be the ones helping you make that money. So I think in a way, maybe it is okay. But equally, there's a power imbalance when you're having a conversation with investors, especially in the current economy. So it's an interesting one, but I don't think anyone has said no because of it. I think ultimately anyone that has committed to invest actually would be doing this anyway. A lot of them are investing through trusts or foundations they've set up for this very purpose. Probably screens out a few people that maybe, even though we really want the cash right now, it's probably a good thing if they don't invest, because they might not be as aligned as we'd like. And I think in the long term, that's really, really important. And most importantly, it has really excited the team. When I told my team about it, they all lit up. And the concept of making money for the man, for these external investors, that some people feel uncomfortable about, especially when they join a business that's so about its impact, suddenly shifted completely, and everyone is aligned going, okay, profit is no longer dirty, that's all going to go into a really great cause. And I think once we have closed the round and we can publicize it more, it will also have a real impact for partners. And as like partnerships is a really key part to our growth model and our impact model. And I think, and a lot of those are non-profit partners. And I think it will really help with bringing those on board. So yeah, that is where we're at. Sorry if I've gone on a bit long, but hopefully that's helpful.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. If you have any questions for Hermione, please put them in the chat and we'll try and get to them. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff just came. I mean, so much came out of that that resonated with me. I was like nodding, and I could see other people nodding as well from the whole journey of where you've come from to where you are, and figuring out when it's not right for you and what it might look like, and focusing on that organic growth to get you to the point where you are able to better set your terms using a different model, and the benefits beyond just having the right type of funding, but motivating your employees is a huge one, I think, for social impact businesses, when individuals are not motivated by, I should say, making money for the big man or making money for investors necessarily. Lots of really interesting stuff in that story. So thank you for sharing. I put I was sort of adding a couple of links as you mentioned things. So there's a link on steward ownership. There's Toast Sales, Equity for Good blog. I don't know, are there term sheets open source or is it private?
You know what? I feel like Rob from Toast Sales shared with me their Google Doc. I feel like I should probably check with him before I share it too publicly.
Yeah.
Just out of courtesy. But I'll pop my email in here. So if anyone wants a copy, drop me an email. And when I've checked with him,
perfect.
I can share it.
Yeah, Rob is really nice and very generous. And it also shows that there's lots of tools and instruments and funding models that already exist that you can borrow entirely, or as Hermione has done, take aspects of, or almost the entire aspect that fits with you, and make some slight changes so there's still a good fit for your business. Wonderful. All right, yes, Hermione's for email in there. Thank you. Okay, we are going to now go to wonderful Kate. Kate is also one of our funding school alumni. She was in our 4th cohort, and she came already determined. She was like, I'm not going to take funding unless I find something that safeguards my mission and the people that I'm working for and looking to support. And this is where she currently is with her business. Take it away, Kate.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen because I think slides will keep me on schedule a bit more. Let's see if I can figure that out. Let's see, share. Oh, never mind. It doesn't have my system prep. Technical difficulties. Okay, I'm not showing my screen, but I'll just, yeah, I'll talk you through it.
Do you want me to share it?
Can you do that? I think, oh, you mean just email it to you?
Or you can just put it in the chat and I can share it.
I think it's going to get, sorry, hold on. Okay, let me see. Sorry, let me figure this out.
We could, if Simon is ready.
Oh yeah, Simon, if you want to go ahead and I'll figure it.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Simon, but if you are ready, we could move to Simon and then go back to Kate.
No, that would be okay for me.
Perfect.
All right, then let's see if sharing my screen works.
Can anyone do it?
But it should.
Perfect, I can see you. Perfect.
And also the next slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, very nice to meet you all. Thanks for the invitation. So my name is Simon. First of all, a couple of words about me. After a terrible time at school, in my last year at school, I started my first company called Zerlo. We built a learning platform for students who have trouble in school and their parents can't afford private tutoring. It's a startup in a very competitive market, but we designed it as a non-profit. So fundraising was a lot of money from donations and state money. And after a couple of years, we had the opportunity to start another company using a little piece of technology we built for the learning platform. It's in the field of cybersecurity, called Ori. And the initial idea was to have a for-profit business that generates money which we can use for the nonprofit. So we got investors on board. It grew fast, and there was a mission drift already after 2 years. We completely underestimated the influence of the investors, had to learn the hard way that they are the real bosses if it comes to difficult decisions, and actually at the end lost control over the company. It's quite successful at the moment, but it doesn't contribute to the nonprofit idea at all anymore. And out of this learning, I got involved in the whole idea of steward ownership, so companies that kind of belong to themselves, and got involved in the lobby work, which is happening in Germany so far quite successfully. We are lobbying to have a new legal entity for companies in Germany that are steward owned, guaranteed by state law and not by some difficult foundation structures. Yeah, and with that in mind, I'm now since 2 years involved in building a new company. Its mission is to make a sustainable way of living for people as accessible, attractive, and affordable as possible. And the way we do this is by trying to build an alternative to Google Maps. So a Maps app that only shows sustainable places for daily needs. You will find sustainable restaurants and cafes. If you need new clothes, you will find all the fair fashion stores, secondhand stores, but also repair options like tailors in your city. And it's a huge endeavor. We have put in research and development for 2 years now, and are very close to launching the beta. It's a very excited moment at the moment. Yeah, and for me, considering the learning I had with my cybersecurity startup, it was important to not only build a sustainable product, but really think about what the company behind this should be. And we decided to use a cooperative and guarantee that the sustainable impact while we do this stays the overall company goal forever. And for that, it has to be in a purpose ownership structure, because otherwise there's always the possibility of a mission drift, especially if we are financially successful. Which also means that if we are able to generate profits, we want to reinvest them in the company, in its growth and growth of its impact. And then other aspects, how we treat our users' data, that we are proud of paying taxes, and that we want to be competitive, not through dominance or being the biggest, but through really reaching out to partners to cooperate and have a collective impact mindset. And just a little practical insight on how we are doing this so far to raise money. It's a very capital intensive endeavor. And we thought about what our funding principles are, we call them. So as I said, we want to stay 100% independent, but to be honest, giving us money is a risk. So it's fair to have this dynamic of, if we fail, you don't get money back. If we are doing okay, you get your money back. And if we are really successful, you took a lot of risks, so it's okay to get a reward on top. But this has to be kept, as we don't want to make individuals super rich. And we have to find a way to pay back this money, not through profits, because we honestly don't have any incentive to make profits. because I, as a founder, don't get money out of profits. So why should I generate profits? I always would take the money to reinvest in the growth of the company. And nevertheless, if we pay money back while growing, it has to be manageable and not be too cost incentive for us. So the way we did this is we decided to to take external money as loans. And here we go. But to have this risk a normal investor would be, it's a subordinated loan. So if we fail, they don't get their money back. And it also doesn't have a fixed date when payback begins, which wouldn't also be not the case with normal equity. And there is no interest involved. So it's quite difficult different to a normal loan. If we are doing okay, they get a redemption, just the money back. And if we are doing really great, they get a multiple as a premium on top of the redemption, which at the moment we set as ×4. So if you're really successful over time, they will get 4 times the initial money, which is a lot more than a donation, but frankly, also a lot less than what classical VCs think of, so that we are not able to get VCs as supporters for this model. Yeah, the multiple is set. So after getting back for time, the initial investment, we don't pay them anything, and they are not involved in the company anymore. We are independent from them. And we pay them back by giving a little share of our continuous revenue. So for the initial round, we now fundraised 500,000. We reserved 5% of our revenue in the future, and payback will start if we are at a certain amount of annual revenue. Yes. Maybe so far, just as an insight of the model we created, it worked quite good. We relied a lot on our personal network, to be frank, to find people who want to do this. So it's not non-profit money, it's not investors. So the people who invested are companies that are strategically interested in our success, and a lot of private persons who have the flexibility to be open to such a new model. Yeah, that's from my side so far. Looking forward to your questions, and I'm always very open to share our knowledge, our contracts, our contacts. So please reach out to me if I can do anything to support you. Thanks.
It would seem we've lost Esme. Possibly. Great. Well, I don't know. I think I can step in. Esme mentioned that she had some power issues. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Hi. Thank you so much for sharing that, Simon. That was super insightful. If anyone's got any questions for Simon or for me, feel free to drop those into the chat. Kate, how are you coming along with your...
I'll just go ahead. I would have to shut Zoom down to be able to share. So it's fine. I can explain it to you and talk everyone through everything. So basically, hi, I'm Kate, and I'm the founder of Horizontal. We are a technology social enterprise addressing exploitation and abuse in full service sex work, which for those of you who don't know is legally known as prostitution, but full service sex work is different from, like, there are other kinds of sex work. So just to distinguish that. And our solution is a privacy protecting, identity-based platform that facilitates consensual, non-abusive bookings between sex workers and clients. And those people are verified that they're consenting, adult, and have no known history of abuse. Our mission is to increase workplace safety, improve financial security, and normalize protections for sex workers who largely have none of those things. For lots of reasons that are social and tech business models and various things. And then our mandate is to reinvest in community. So both in the form of mission-aligned tech innovation and also in the form of funding what are currently underfunded community organizations and services. So one of the things I've learned in working in this space is sex worker organizations get almost no funding. They're constantly just struggling to keep the lights on. So it's basically creating a mechanism for capturing value, retaining it, and reinvesting it in community. Okay, so we have, and actually it's funny listening to Simon because we looked into a cooperative model and it turned out to be not really a fit for us. So I think it shows that, you know, everyone will have to kind of go through their journey of figuring out what's the right structure for your business and what you're doing. So we're a steward-owned, purpose-led company. And initially we had that as everything. So that was the force for tech. And also part of our proposition is working closely with communities. So we have our tech R&D developing the platform, but we have a whole element of bringing representative community stakeholders into key decision-making. So not that it's like, I think co-design kind of gets a bad name because it can be quite, you're trying to involve people at a granular level, where for us, it's really like, how do we bring people into high stakes decision-making around like really important issues about identity and privacy. And part of that is educating people on what the stakes are. And so they can actually make informed decisions as opposed to like, well, I have this opinion and it might be emotional, or it might just be based on what I know. This feels like it's right. So it's really like, how do you bring people into participating in the things that are going to affect them? But ultimately, and I can get into why this is, we realized we had to break out that community work under a nonprofit. So we now have a hybrid organization, which is the steward-owned tech company, and then Horizontal Collaborative, which is our community nonprofit. We're applying for charity recognition here in the UK. A lot of that just has to do with existing funding. So I think like one of the things I realized really quickly is you have to be quite flexible. So you're just going to hit up against things that sometimes feel quite insurmountable. Like in this case, well, actually, I'll go ahead. I'll get to what our funding model is, and then I can explain more about that. But all of that is related to producing our tech product. So our main considerations in going into this are one, that we're just like expensive, early stage, risky tech. We have a massive total addressable market, like all these things that would make us the perfect candidate for VC funding, but it's completely antithetical to not just our mission and mandate, but I also think it's fundamentally unethical. So it just doesn't work. So it's finding capital that aligns with our mission and agrees that we should keep wealth within community. So second thing to consider was that this is quite controversial. Oh, my deck. Anyway, I'll keep going. So it's quite controversial. I think I underestimated in some ways how controversial it would be for people to non-judgmentally help sex workers. So that's a big piece. And like early on, I got the advice of like, oh, you should just do a crypto fundraise or something like that. I'm like, if we do that, we are so sketchy. You know, it's like the things that send the wrong signals. So for us, it's like really important to have early funding that sends the right signals, where there's like a prestige there, there's a seriousness, you know, there's an ally that can just send the right message about what we're doing. The thing I mentioned before is that we're introducing a lot of community centering inefficiencies. So they're not actually like in the grand scheme of how you build a tech product, where it's just like get it to market, start piloting it, like testing it. And, you know, that whole approach is really incompatible with what we're doing, which is putting community first. And including them in a lot of the things that will go into prototyping, even though fundamentally we have the core vision and roadmap and so much built in like a paper prototype sense. There's a lot that has to involve community, where it would, I think, break trust if we made those decisions. Stakeholder interests have to be more important than shareholder interests. Community needs to have voting shares, not economic shareholders. There's no traditional path to exit to protect purpose, and profits have to be reinvested in community. So those are all the main considerations that went into thinking about, well, what kind of funding do we take, and what does that look like? So Our fundraising, we're currently fundraising for Horizontal, the technology company, and that's 1 million in patient capital from mission-aligned individuals and foundations, really looking at like program-related investment for redeemable equity. So I know no one has talked about redeemable equity, but the logic of it is you set the terms in advance. So it's basically like, 6 to 8 years, a return that's capped at, in this case, it'll likely be 2 to 3 times. We're pre-negotiating those with investors. And then there's a small percentage where if our tech has other applications or there's some situation where there's a fair market value that's way higher than that, we leave the option that there's some return for early investors or people who negotiate under this model that they could get more potentially. And then Horizontal Collaborative is raising 400,000, all of this is in pounds actually, in grants and philanthropy from foundations and individuals. And that's funding both our community work and our tech R&D. And there's a big like original R&D component to what we're doing, which is around cryptographically protected identity and reputation and various things. So that's part of why it's expensive. But we're mostly trying to work with existing open source technologies whenever possible. Okay, so where are we now? Bootstrap to date, and actually I will say like a ton of goodwill in this case, like, from the community, from my team, just people who've like been quite generous with their time. And I think it's been so important to have people who believe in the mission. And I think like that is always the advantage when you're working on something mission oriented, is that if you can connect with people who really share that commitment, there's just more space than I think like a traditional tech startup where it's just all about money and like, when do I get mine? It's just different incentives. So we started fundraising in Q1 of this year. We've raised no money to date. I have like a whole, like a stat sheet here. So I'll just read you from that. So far, I've done like more than 100 pitches to impact funds, foundations, family offices, and high net worth individuals. Those are all like very well researched. I don't pitch anyone who I think is not going to like be interested in this or hasn't sent out some signal that it would be something they care about. I've had a number of meetings. So I have, oh, that slide right there, that one. Go up one more, back to where you were. Yeah, this one. Great. Okay. So I've had about 40 to 50 meetings, and those are good, but obviously like it's, there's a lot of education. There's a lot of getting people to understand the issue, the problems of the space. And actually I share some of those insights. So I'll get to that. We've had a number of kind replies where people are just like, this sounds great. Good luck. Even a couple like, how can I help you? But this isn't for us. We've done 5 grant applications and been rejected from 3, and 2 are open. We have 2 open tech impact applications. All of these are very much tied to like making sure that they're aligned with our mission. So we don't apply to anything tech related that doesn't conform to our terms, or couldn't be a fit for those. I think we've come close to meeting our first source of funding, who is like, yeah, so that. And then the final thing is just like, one of the things that I've started to observe is that the word of mouth network of like wealthy investors and funders is starting to take effect, where I feel like people are mentioning what we're doing to other people. They're sharing that information. And yeah, so I'll get into the insights now, because like a lot of this sets up things that I've learned just to now through this work. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so first, this is before we ever started fundraising. The controversial nature of this topic just limits our access to lots of things. So, early on, for example, there's like a pro bono legal resource here. And I was basically just told like, we won't touch this. It's too controversial. We work with law firms that this is just going to be problematic for them. And it's been a consistent theme that when somebody is going to have to go back and sell this to other people in their organization or explain why they're supporting it, it's too heavy a lift, and they just think like, I don't want to draw this controversy and it's too much. So that for me was like a big filter pretty quickly of like, okay, a lot of things are just not going to be available to us. Okay, next slide. This is what everyone's saying. The system just really isn't built for new models and ways of doing things. There's still, particularly in the UK, there's a very binary mindset of like, you're either giving to charity and philanthropies, or you're investing for normal with the expectation of, normal high returns. So there's a part of, educating and collaborating with people in new directions, but also recognizing in some places that people aren't going to be flexible, which is why we ended up breaking out our nonprofit and for-profit. But I think one of the things that's come out for me is that this is like the funders you end up working with will have to be very collaborative in developing your model with you. Like they are learning as they go, and they are working to develop that new model with you. So I don't think it's like there's this perfect answer out there, or, you just have to tap into this seam of somebody who knows like exactly how to write the term sheet for this or whatever it is. It's a lot of it is unformed. Okay, next slide. This is a big one just for this issue, but I think it's true for probably a lot of social enterprises, is you kind of have to meet funders where they are. So one of the things that I learned quite quickly and what we're working on is I have to start with human trafficking, which is actually how I came to this issue, is working on an anti-human trafficking project. But there's like a lot of things you realize that you have to give someone permission to consider things that are new. A lot of people just haven't thought about sex workers. So there's a lot of meeting someone in the space that's comfortable for them and then bringing them to where I am. And then that creates like a very different conversation and just like an openness to thinking about the issue and the problem and solutions. Okay, 4. Okay, this one, grants and applications are just a huge time suck. Do your research, and if you can get inside information before applying, do. Like we've had the issue of, I applied for this grant that was like we were made for, and we got rejected. And then later I read in the fine print of the US government site that anyone who takes funding from the US government can't fund anything that helps sex workers. So it's just basically like, that's something that now I know. And now I look, does this organization take funding from the US government? And so there are things like that where it's like, for the amount of time that goes into applying for a grant, which can be a lot, I think to really try to get some sort of sense of, are we actually going to be considered for this? Is there a likelihood that we're going to get it? Because otherwise it's just a waste. Okay, my next point is, just the, don't find us, we'll find you. I think I was surprised by how many foundations you just can't get to them. You have to do all of this stepping to, just like an intro to an intro to an intro to somebody who gets you inside. And you'll see on a lot of websites, like, we don't accept applications, or all of our funding is already allocated. But then when you actually talk to people, that's not always the case. So there's a lot of this is just like networking and finding your way. Another insight is I spent a lot of time trying to talk to financial or like wealth advisors, because obviously for high net worth individuals or family offices, often they're the people who are the front lines. But those people are very, very risk averse, and to count on them to tell your story, to share your message, all of that is quite challenging and unreliable. I think basically like the network effect, I know I've said this a couple of times, is just a massive, like, funders talk to other funders. Like I met with this woman probably a month ago who has a family office. She said she's young. She said, like, my parents, other people in the family would never fund this. I ran into her in a coffee shop the other day, and she said, "Oh, I've been talking about you. I was at this funders event and I was sharing." And she said, "I have a couple of people who are really interested in what you're doing." So I think like the idea that one meeting doesn't amount to anything doesn't mean that something else might not amount to something. So that, again, just like building that network, talking to people, you never know where you'll find an ally, even if they can't support you themselves. And then the final thing is there's a big generational divide. So I find when I talk to people who are younger, like the openness to new funding models, the openness to what we're doing related to sex work, the openness to new business approaches and that things need to be more sustainable. Like, I think that there's a ton of interest there. Whereas when you talk to people who are older, I think they're still pretty entrenched in older models. So those are just things I don't quite know what to do with that information yet, but I think like it makes me optimistic that things are changing and that that's coming. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts from this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate. As you can see from all of those stories and people's experiences, stuff that you can't access anywhere else is people's real experiences of what they went through, how it happened, and what they're currently doing. And just look at that list of learnings that Kate has very kindly put together. That's hard-won learnings. I see some nods here. I see lots of very supportive comments in the chat. Also, you might want to check, there's some suggestions in there, Kate, around possibly places that you can look for funders. You know, anybody have connections or ideas or resources? We are all learning, we're all finding new things. Every single person has got value, and I hope that you can see that today in these fantastic stories. Thank you also, Simon. I know I am lucky enough, I've already heard your wonderful story, and I know that what you're doing is really, yeah, quite radical, I think, in the stance that you're taking, and the money that you are looking for and how you're trying to fundraise. And I hope today this had shown all of you what is possible from these three really generous and kind individuals who are sharing their vulnerable stories. We're in the middle of fundraising. They're still working it out, but they decided to take that difficult route to see what's possible. So thank you. Lots of really nice comments in the chat. So yeah, that's it. That is the event. I hope you've all had a really interesting 1 hour. I promised it would be valuable. I hope we have fulfilled that. As I said, I'm staying for an extra half an hour. So if you're really interested in tackling your own funding journey, exploring what the possibilities might look like, and getting support along the way for your fundraising confidence, for your paths, and a community like the people who are here today to help you do that, then please stay for as long as you can. And wonderful Jordan and I are going to be here to answer any questions that you might have around the funding school. But other than that, I will give you back 1 minute of your day. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And if you can stay, if there's links in the chat that you want to grab, then please do so before they are lost. Otherwise, we will do our Q&A.
Have a nice evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
I've asked Rob about the Equity for Good pledge, so if anyone does want it, he's still here. My email's in the chat, or just look me up on LinkedIn and I'll try and share that.
Perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yes. If anyone wants any of those resources. Otherwise, we are going to open the floor for questions around the funding school specifically. And you're welcome to stay if you're interested in joining. You can, and Jordan is here. Wonderful Jordan, waving. He was very kindly been monitoring the chat as well. If you have questions about joining the funding school, what it is, how it works, what it's like, please put them in the chat or ask directly. And we will help you. Hermione and Kate, you are welcome to stay and share your experiences, but also I'm aware that you have a busy day and things to be getting on with. So you may also, of course,
I do need to hop off, so I will leave, yeah, but I highly recommend it. And thanks for having me.
I was just chatting in the chat. Bye, Hermione. I was just chatting with a couple
Thank
people.
You for answering their questions. Yeah. Right, blanks. your question.
Yes, May. Thanks
Hi.
for organizing this sort of events. Pretty epic. Just watching how others, explain their own personal journey. But I mean, this is not necessarily about funding school, but if you would like to tell me more about it, that's great as well. I enjoy your newsletter. That's awesome. Just an idea for you. Is there, do you plan on giving some sort of a list of grants and things like that? That's I don't know if there's some sort of community aspect of it where everyone's reporting, okay, this is a grant that we've gone for, and it would be good if there's a concise list of, say, 50 or however many there is, to so that we can systematically explore these sources. So that's one that could be a feature on your newsletter. That would be pretty awesome if you're looking at that, or maybe that's part of your offering in with Funding School. The other question is getting introductions to impact investors. I don't know, what's the entry point? Obviously not really looking at a list, but once you go down that rabbit hole, then lots of other things will come across. Yeah, those are my questions. Thank you.
In terms of grants for the newsletter, so people very kindly always send me grants that they've applied for, or they've won, or they work with a particular organization, and that's how we largely pull that list together. We don't go sort of beyond that, because that is probably a whole business in itself. And there are businesses that specifically focus on helping you raise grant funding, like they've got, they help you write the grants, you pay to access a list of grants. So no, we don't plan to go beyond that at the moment, but we always appreciate feedback on how we can make our newsletter better. In terms of investor connections, I think that I get this question a lot. Almost every day I get people asking if I can make connections to various investors. We don't do it in a systematic fashion, because I think it's a hugely difficult undertaking. Every single individual needs to know how much they want to raise, who they want to raise it from, and what their terms will be. And that's largely what we support you through the school, and be ready to address and speak with investors. And we do, on an ad hoc basis for our graduates, help connect you in which way we can. But we don't have this as a service, because it's it's hard. It's really, really hard if you're going after a very small niche of investors.
Okay, just a follow-up question on the grants. Do you have like a list on your website? Obviously the emails will just give you the latest stuff, and that's a nudge, but if there was like a link, I mean, that would be very valuable if that is something you could look at doing. But yeah, I mean, that's just my inputs.
Sure, we have our funding directory that gives a list of grants. The difficulty with grants is that as soon as you make a directory of them, it becomes almost obsolete. Because as soon as you put up a grant, it may not come back the next year. There are grant funding bodies, and we provide a list of them, and you need to go and see what grants they're offering at any particular time on those pages, because sometimes they're annual grants, and I recommend putting a nice calendar together of all the annual grants in your particular sector, but you'll get one-off grants. As we saw during COVID, there was a lot of one-off grants that have not been repeated. So I think you'll struggle to find a good list of solid grant opportunities for your sector. There are platforms where you pay a subscription to be able to access some grants, because it needs to be live and it needs to be constantly updated. What are your thoughts on that?
I've got about 50 grants that I've historically applied for and all of that. So I'm happy to share it with you and the community if that is, and they sort of recur every few months, which I can do because obviously we've applied and we'll probably be applying for the latest round. So if you want, I can do that. But it'll be great if the other founders who are doing similar sort of things can also put it into some sort of shared Airtable or a Google Doc. So it's probably like a bit of a community aspect. I think that's That's sweet. But just an idea. Let me know. I'll send you an email as well after, so you can.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, do it. You know, if people send me grants and send me the opportunities, I'll always try and include them in the newsletter. But yeah, thank you for offering that. I want to open up the floor if there's anyone else who's got any specific questions. So Jordan is here to explain them and her experiences of joining the school as well. Yes, wonderful, Jackie.
Hi there. I did drop you an email after the last session with me to make an offer to the people inside the membership. Oh, can you hear me?
Sorry.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, it just went a bit yes.
Wobbly. Okay.
Yeah.
I did send you an email after the last session I attended to make an offer to everybody in the membership for the Climate Champions initiative that I've done initially for the 900 million members on LinkedIn, but effectively I've got the right to offer that to anybody who's the right people. So that's obviously you, Esme. So shall I send that again, or pop that?
Yes,
I mean, put that up your inbox. I just love to be able to give those resources out and help everybody, mainly because insider information here. At COP28 in December, the business landscape's been changed largely by me because I've changed the rules, and you get a good few months. I can't remember, but a long day, Australia time today. You get a few months heads up on that and can be on the front foot. And I wanted really to give back for all the wonderful things you do with me and contribute to the community, really.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I mean, you can put the link in the chat right now if you want. People can access it, but if you send it to me.
No, I was thinking that you could send it out on your newsletter, because I know it's like people are on the call, but give it to everybody on the grounds that that's whoever wants to become a climate champion and create a sustainable business, then effectively LinkedIn have paid. So that's good. But it's really to get their own emissions under control. That's their motivation. My motivation is to be able to get a deal so that my 10 million entrepreneurs in the empathy economy get access to it. But actually, they didn't think to put any limits on it. They didn't put the empathy economy on it. So I'm free to give it to whoever. So that's what I'm doing.
Nice. Well, this is what we're all about, right? We have a lot of people who share generously, who give their resources. So yeah, if you've got a link, you can add to the newsletter, and it'll be going out on every Sunday.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I'll send that again. I'll just bump it up in your inbox. But I just wanted to say that's what it was.
Inbox just get a bit overwhelming. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Bye. Is it easier to do it another way, LinkedIn or some other way? Is it the best way?
The inbox is fine. I will hunt it out. Don't worry, I won't miss it.
Hunt it out or hunt me down if you can't find it.
Yeah, one of those things.
That's great. Thanks, Esme. I'm going to go now if that's okay, but great to meet everybody.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we've got a handful of people here. Just checking if we can stay in community and have a chit chat, or if people have direct questions about funding school, happy to answer them now. So we have 2 people who have done the school and somebody who's signing up for our school in the summer.
If there are people who've done the school, I'd love to hear about their experiences. That would be great.
Do you want me to hop in, Esme?
Yes, please. I will be quiet.
Cool. Hi, I believe your name's Joanna, yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Joanna. Nice to virtually meet you. So so I was in the last cohort, so with Kate, and I suppose Hermione as well. I didn't realize that we were in the same cohort as well.
You were in the previous cohort.
Oh, okay. I see. So I was in the same cohort as Kate. She and I have actually met up in London as well, which is quite cool. Experience of the school. So I think it's important to preface that, like, I'm coming at this from a slightly or a significantly different angle, right? So my journey has been a lot different. When I found Esme and the course and everything, I was not only like a first time founder, but I was really just kind of testing the waters. Like I took a little bit of a break to just try something new, see what I was kind of, you know, just like a different kind of path a little bit. And it was very low stakes, kind of just, I had like a little bit of money I wanted to put into something and bootstrap. It was like very lean startup. And coming into it from that angle, I think it was really just this like open-eyed learning experience to be like, what is out there? Like, you know, similar to, I think many people, I thought, oh, it's just like either you get like this massive venture capital thing that I literally was like so loosely defined for me. I had no idea really like what that actually entails. I didn't know what an exit was. It was very, very new for me. But I also was just coming at it from, you know, in terms of like an impact kind of organization. I was like, you know, oh, I suppose I'll just crowdfund and just make all my money doing that, which I tried and miserably failed at. So the thing is, coming into the school, I think the biggest thing that I got out of this is just knowing that there are so many different resources out there. Just like, it's like endless, the amount of resources. And that, you know, you might think, oh, that might be overwhelming, but it's actually so helpful in the sense it like calms all that overwhelm to be like, wow, there's like so many possible avenues and resources and ways that you could go about this. That was hugely helpful for me. And I think another thing I'd add is the community and just that sense of not feeling alone, because being like doing this as a first time founder, you know, really like having just no clue what I was doing. I felt super overwhelmed and I felt so alone because people in my friend group and my family just had no idea what I was going through. You know, for them, it was like, oh, it's just this little project. And I'm like, no, I'm like actually trying to make a business. This is like a real thing. And to have other people that I could just be real with and be like, this has been such a hard day. I feel so lost. I feel so confused. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. That was just worth its weight in gold. Plus, I don't know if that's still a thing as me, but lifetime access, I think that's still a thing, hopefully, yeah. That's pretty cool because so ultimately I ended up closing the project that I started, and that's okay, I'm on a different path now, but I don't think the entrepreneurial itch is gone. So when I do come back to that, because it's definitely a when, not an if, I feel so empowered to do this better, like 1,000 times better than I did it the first time. And to find something to actually just approach it the other way around, you know, like instead of having this very naive mentality that I had, which is the like build it and they will come kind of situation. It's more like, no, we're going to figure out the finances first. And then hopefully everything else will sort itself out from there. So those were my initial kind of reflections on the school. It's very quiet. Does anyone have anything?
It's really helpful, and thanks for sharing your perspective. It's really helpful to understand where you are at.
Yeah.
So, appreciate that.
Esme, am I the other person?
Yes, yes, you are coming.
I was just gonna add that I had maybe a similar experience to Jordan, and I'm part of a consultants kind of cooperative and collaborative. So we were doing the school together as a team, and we are a configuration of people with individual projects as well. So I was learning from the standpoint of this group of people that I'm trying to raise resources with. And then it really kind of blew my head off with how differently I should think about my personal projects. And my family's from the Caribbean, and I don't know who else has this experience, but we're like, we have a need, we have an idea, you do it, right? And then so this idea of what it means to be building a business versus work that I know that I could do that I'm doing in a business format was very eye-opening for me as well. And even the concept of, because you just think like fundraising as getting people to give you money for it. And there's always this like mysterious they, right? Like, oh, they're giving money for that. And so that's how the conversation usually happens in community, especially like if you don't come from wealth and means and resources, right? So even just the concept of what it means to access resources or know where resources are when you don't come from any personal experience or even work experience of having resources available to you is a jump that that I had to make as well. So actually my question was going to be that, like, now that I have been engaged, you know, I'm about maybe a year or so away from it. Now I'm ready to re-engage and to access the community in a different way. But there was a validation that I didn't know I needed, that some of the activities of coming together and somebody like you, you do the courses and you do the coursework and you hear the speakers and you're like, oh my God, I'm nowhere near that. And then we're in small groups and you tell somebody what you're working on and like, oh, that sounds amazing. And they've already raised tons of money. So I was just like, oh, so like there was just so many different layers of things that I got that I didn't know that I needed. And then the opportunity to continue the learning and to continue the building. So I'm at also a pivoting place where the idea is getting more refined. And the way that I know that I need to go about asking for money and resources is very different. And so today's conversation was really helpful, but it's just it gave a huge maturity to how I talk about what it means to raise resources and how to support my business and how do I talk to people about what I want to be invested in, right? So there's projects, but I'm also coming to understand that I want investment in myself, right? Like I think I'm a muse and I think, you know, that as much as all of these other tech things can get invested in, the social good that I know how to do, even when it's not, when I can't speak about it in a product, right? It's still something that I know is worth investing in. So I'm no longer shy about saying that I also want investment in my family, because when we do well and when we have the capital to do the things that we're dreaming about, there's so many different layers of benefit to our community. So that's what I got out of it.
Thanks so much. That's so powerful to hear. I really appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, thank you. I've never heard that from you, so thank you. Warms my heart. Does anyone else have any? I know that I see your hand raised, Lanks, but I want to make sure that if anyone else has any questions they want to ask, or thoughts or reflections, then unmute yourselves or put them in the chat now. All right, well, we are, everyone is here to listen, which is also nice. Do you want to ask your question, Lanks?
Yes, May. This is about funding school. I'll tell you a bit about me. I've been in business since 2010. I've created a company from nothing to 1.5 million annual revenues. I also sold it. I also raised capital. Is there anything I can learn from school?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, it's not necessarily an easy question for me to answer without having a bit more information around your background. I would say that we have a variety of different people who join the school, people that have bootstrapped until now, built businesses for 10 years, you know, have got steady, good revenue, have already fundraised, have raised equity funding, have done grants, have done most things, and they still come on this program and go, wow, there's so many routes of funding that we didn't see, that we didn't know existed, or that we didn't know was accessible to us. And even when you've heard of them, you don't know how to access them, you don't know how to think if they fit into your capital stack. So largely we're here for people who want to understand how much they need to raise, where they might look to get that funding, what the options are, a framework for thinking about how you put all those together and get a capital stack that's right for you, and then putting those terms together. So where Hermione and Kate are thinking about, actually, I've got the model, I've got the type, but I still need to think about what those exact terms are for me that work as I bring those to investors. So that's largely what we cover.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I don't know if Jordan or Kamala wants to add anything to that.
I'd just say that there's always something to learn. I think I think no matter where we're at, I mean, like, I know for you, like, it's like you're obviously a lot further along in your journey than I am, and then I certainly was when I started the school. But it's like, as we said, like, you know, there's such a range and breadth of people that take this course that I think that's actually, it's kind of its secret weapon and its strength is the diversity of the course. Because if you're surrounded by people that are all in the same place as you are, right? It's not actually that interesting because you're all having the same challenges at the same exact moment, right? Whereas if you're actually listening to, you know, this diverse group of people that are coming at it from very different angles with different businesses, with different challenges, I think you get this like ping pong effect of like, oh, wow, that's so cool. I didn't think about that, you know, whereas like if you're all just this hive mind kind of in the same place, while there may be an advantage to that because you're in the same place, I don't think it inspires the same conversation. I can't say for certain because I've never participated in such a course, but I wouldn't think that it would inspire the same conversation that we had through the alternative funding school for sure. Yeah,
It's more about the opportunity cost because, you know, there are so many rabbit holes you can go under. So that's my thing. But what I find attractive is the community aspect of it, which Esme, you've done a wonderful job of bringing all these people together, and you can learn off different people. But yeah, so thanks for answering that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's difficult. But I would say is for people who want that community aspect. And this is why we ask people to apply. I have rejected some people in the past who were not interested in their community aspect. They wanted information now and weren't interested in learning, or one person did say they didn't see the value in learning from other people, which I thought was possibly, you know, it's not the right place for you. People learn in different ways, right? And if you want to learn from other people who are in a similar position to you, as well as people that are ahead of you and have different expertise, and this is the place to be, I think. Nice to see you. Am I saying your name correctly, Romek? Am I saying that correctly?
Yep, Romek, as I'm used to all varieties of
no,
it.
I mean, so am I, but I want to try and say it correctly, even with my dyslexia, and sometimes it doesn't go as well as I'd hope. But it's nice to see you here. You are joining in June, and I think you've attended every single one of our events. So I always see you nodding along, which I enjoy immensely.
I have, thank you. I am very excited for the school. Very, very much looking forward to it. I'm kind of preparing myself and learning from. So thank you, Esme and Jordan and Kamala. That's super, super useful to hear your experiences. Very inspiring.
what's your project, Romek?
Briefly, it's a note-taking application, but note-taking for journaling, for mental health, for personal growth, I guess.
Oh, super cool.
And other things. Yeah. I didn't actually want to take up space because I'm already joining. But if there is no other question, then I could maybe ask a short one. If there are, Daria or Susanna, not? Okay. I was wondering if you have any tips for like how best to make use of the community aspect of the course, from your experience, to kind of use the peer groups. And have you stayed in touch with people after the course and stayed in your peer groups? And any tips basically?
Kamala, do you want me to field this one, or would you like to take it?
Yeah, my answer to that is very short, that I didn't. There is community and connecting woven into the sessions. And so it's sometimes part of homework and sometimes part of like when we get back together, the debrief. But actually I'm looking to reconnect and get back involved in using the spaces. So I haven't done as much because I think also maybe because we were doing it as a group.